Well, the 2026 tornado season starts on March 1st, and as of recording this, that is only one day away. And I'm sure you're asking, will I see tornadoes this year? So that's exactly what we're going to go over in this video. Where might you see tornadoes, and when will those tornadoes happen? So let's get right into it. But before we start, it does need to be said that all of the information in this video is simply speculation, just highly educated guessing. It is hard to predict a tornado even a few hours before they happen, much less a few months before they happen. So all of the information in this video is from research that shows different conditions do play a role in tornado frequency and location, and that's exactly what we're going to go over in this video. Those conditions, why they matter, and how they'll impact this tornado season. So, hope you guys enjoy. So, going into 2026, there's a pretty weak La Nina in place, and the Climate Prediction Center has a La Nina advisory in effect. But like I said, this La Nina is quite weak, and there is an expected transition into an ENSO neutral, which is a balance or the middle of El Nino and La Nina. So, kind of closer to average temperatures in the Pacific Ocean near the equator. And with this La Nina, it will likely bring a slightly more above average early season in, say, March. But then as we transition into an El Nino, I think the back end of the year, being those months transitioning from fall to winter, we won't see much of that second tornado season that some areas in the deep south or in the classic tornado alley sometimes see. So here's a graphic showing exactly what a La Nina does to our jet stream and then, of course, our weather conditions. It pushes the jet stream quite far north, which allows it to dip across the United States, making it a lot easier for those severe weather events to occur. But in an El Nino, it stays pretty straight across the United States, not really leaving a whole lot of room for those big dips, and that kind of mutes our severe weather season. But that weak La Nina is what is in place at the beginning of this severe weather season. So here's a map showing the ocean temperature anomalies in the Pacific and the exact area that you want to keep an eye on for the El Nino Southern Oscillation is here in this region. And you can see this is early January. It is a bit cooler, which is why we had that La Nina in place, but as we progress through January and into February, you see that it starts to warm up quite a bit, and that is why they're expecting a neutral pattern to set in the later months of spring. So now that you know the conditions going into 2026, let's go over some analog years, or years that are similar to this year's El Nino or La Nina setup, and I picked out 3 years. You might have picked out some different years for your prediction, but these are 3 of the years that I thought fit best for this year's setup. And that's going to be 2006, 2018, and 2023. So in 2006, there would be 1,103 tornadoes, and it would make for a year that was really dominated by, I would say, the Midwest in states like Missouri, Illinois, and parts of Arkansas, Tennessee saw a very high tornado frequency. And I think that this is going to be a pretty consistent pattern across a lot of our years. And even in this year, not a whole lot of activity in the deep south or even really the classic tornado alley states like Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, but maybe up in the northern portions of Tornado Alley, like the Dakotas and even Minnesota. And here we are looking at Tornado Archive, and this is an absolutely great resource for anyone to use to look at any date or span of time for tornado occurrences. And here we are looking at the March of 2006. We're going to go through March through June, each month by month. And here you can see March was pretty active across the southwestern portions of the Midwest, with Missouri seeing a lot of tornadoes this month and into Illinois as well, with some small occurrences in portions of the Tornado Alley and Dixie Alley. And here we are in April of 2006, and you can see that the Midwest was quite active once again, and then portions of the northern Dixie Alley did see quite a bit of tornado occurrences with multiple EF3s across the region. And in Tornado Alley, not insanely active, but you do see quite a few occurrences in states of Kansas and Nebraska. And then we get to May of 2006, and you're probably looking at this map and cringing because you can see that there's just really nothing going on here in May. Maybe quite a bit of activity in Texas, but really not anything too impressive. Maybe a few up here in the Midwest, but once again, this is a historically inactive May in 2006. And June is a lot of the same story, with literally nothing going on here across the southern portions of the United States. Quite a bit of light tornado activity here in the western Tornado Alley, and still a bit in the Midwest, but once again, very low in terms of average tornado activity. So now you get the gist for 2006. The next year that I thought was pretty close in terms of conditional setup was 2018. And if you're a storm chaser that chased during this year, you're probably thinking of this and you're not too happy because 2018 was a pretty low end year with not many violent tornadoes, which is certainly a good thing for the general public. But in 2018, there were 1,121 tornadoes, which was pretty quiet. And you can see here in the tornadoes of 2018, it was pretty scattered all over the place, with pretty much every region seeing tornado activity across the Midwest, Tornado Alley, and portions of the Ark-La-Tex region in a lot of Louisiana, and then up into Mississippi and Alabama as well. So to start the month by month of 2018, we'll start with March once again, and you can see that it was very below average here in March, with only tornado activity happening across the Dixie Alley in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and parts of Georgia as well, with, it appears, one tornado occurrence in the classic Tornado Alley region. So March was severely underperforming here in 2018. Then to move on to April here, you do see a bit of an uptick in tornado activity, and it's really still nothing crazy here in April. A lot down here in the Louisiana and Mississippi areas, and then a little bit up into the Midwest in states like Arkansas, Mississippi, and Kentucky and Illinois, with even a quick event here in the Carolinas, which is unusual, but it does seem like there have been increased tornado frequency in the Carolinas. But in this video, we're going to keep it to the normal Midwest Tornado Alley and Dixie Alley. And then here in 2018, you see a big shift away from Dixie Alley, but towards Tornado Alley, with Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma seeing quite a bit more activity here in the month of May, with areas in the Midwest seeing a few tornado occurrences, but nothing crazy. So the classic Tornado Alley really took the main stage here in May of 2018. And then here in June, really just follows the same pattern up here into the northern Tornado Alley in the Dakotas and Nebraska, really only seeing activity in this month, with Dixie Alley and the Midwest quieting almost completely, with the only Midwest state that really saw much tornado occurrences was Illinois. So 2023 is another year that I thought was quite close in relation in terms of conditions, and this year was a pretty active year in terms of tornadoes. You see here on the year annual tornado map that the Dixie Alley area was pretty active in this year, with the Midwest also being quite active in terms of tornado occurrences. So here you see March of 2023, and you can just see how active this month was for tornadoes, with Dixie Alley seeing a pretty sizable event on the 31st of March, along with the Midwest in states like Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa seeing very high tornado frequency, but really nothing to be said about Tornado Alley during March. So here's April of 2023, and you can see there is a little less activity in this month, but remember that tornado event was on March 31st, so that really could have gone either way, but you do see here in the Midwest, like Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri, did see quite a few tornadoes during April, along with a pretty big uptick right around Oklahoma City, but that is a little too specific to say that'll apply to 2026, but just a bit of an uptick here in the Tornado Alley as well here in April. And then for May 2023, I think you're probably starting to see a bit of a pattern here as Dixie Alley is once again very inactive for the month of May, and a lot of the activity shifts up into the classic Tornado Alley area up in the Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska areas, with some states in the Midwest still seeing tornado activity here in Iowa and Illinois. And then in June, just yet again, another crazy shift to the west here in Tornado Alley, with Colorado, parts of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandle seeing a lot of the activity for the month of June, with states across the Midwest in Illinois and Indiana seeing a bit of an uptick in severe weather here in June, but not a whole crazy lot to look at. So for my overall 2026 tornado forecast, I think that 2026 will probably be slightly below average in terms of tornado count, with probably around 1,200 to 1,300 tornadoes happening throughout the entire year. I think March will probably overperform a little bit, and we'll dive deeper into the monthly breakdown, but then April and May probably seeing a lower tornado count, and then June to uptick to cap the year off. And this year, I don't think the Dixie Alley area will see quite as many tornado outbreaks as usual, and I think we'll see a bit of a resurgence of the classic Tornado Alley region and the Midwest. So for the month of March, I do believe that we are going to see a pretty above average March in areas like the Dixie Alley and the Midwest, with the classic Tornado Alley being pretty quiet, so possibly a few outbreak type events in Dixie Alley and the Midwest here in the early season in March. Then by April, I think the Dixie Alley region will start to be phased out a little bit, and more of a shift towards that Tornado Alley region, and still quite a strong area in the Midwest. But I do think April is going to be quite below average compared to our months of March and June. And then May, I think we are going to be fully transitioned out of the Dixie Alley region and fully into the Midwest and the classic Tornado Alley, with Tornado Alley seeing a bit more tornadoes this month than months prior. But I do still think that this will probably be our lowest tornado count month of the year. And then by June, I think we will see that westerly shift that we saw like in 2023, where the western portions of Tornado Alley see a pretty high uptick in parts of Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, and even up into the Dakotas. And then the Midwest starting to dwindle out maybe a little bit, but still lingering with some pretty high tornado activity in the states of Iowa and Illinois mainly. So overall, I do think that June is going to be pretty above average in terms of its June average tornado count. So overall, I do think that June is going to be pretty above average in terms of the average June tornado count. So I do think we're going to have a pretty interesting year in terms of tornadoes, with March and June being our main months of activity. I do think it'll be below average, but I guess we will have to see at the end of this tornado season how good we did on this prediction video. We'll come back, do an analysis, do a analysis of the tornado season as a whole, and throw it back against this prediction video and see how well we did. So, see you guys then. Make sure you like and subscribe to keep updated on any severe weather or any weather events happening in your area so that you are always weather warned.